Good evening. This open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Newbury Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you should not screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All of the materials for this meeting are available on the Town of Newbury's website under the Conservation Commission's agenda section. Let's see, so to permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct and to ensure accurate meeting minutes, I, the chair, will introduce everybody on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any responses, please wait until I, the chair, yield the floor to you and state your name and address, or just state who you are, name, address, before speaking. If anybody wishes to engage with anybody else, please do so through the chair. And then that's sort of the generic script. And then we're going to do a special script for tonight to hopefully, establish some ground rules and keep things moving nicely. All right, so for tonight's script. Right, so my name is Brian Collar, and I'm the chairman of the CONCOM. Hi, everybody, thanks for coming. This is a meeting of the Conservation Commission being held for the purpose of discussing the draft amendments to the Town of Newbury Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 95 of the Code of the Town of Newbury. A brief history of the bylaw. The original bylaw was adopted at town meeting on June 11th of 2001. The current bylaw was amended at town meeting on April 11th of 2005. The current wetland bylaw only pertains to the barrier beach known as Plum Island and affords the Commission jurisdiction with respect to coastal resource areas such as Barrier Beach, Coastal Bank, coastal dunes, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and land subject to flooding. As a result of the Commission's proposed amendments, the current bylaw will remain the same with only minor grammatical changes proposed, and updating of outdated references being contemplated with this amendment. No substantive change that would notably affect the current bylaw is proposed. The specific purpose of the proposed amendments is to include language that provides the Commission with a local bylaw that applies to some additional coastal resources newly identified and all inland wetland resource areas within the Town of Newbury. For clarity during the discussion of the proposed amendments, the existing bylaw language will be presented in black text. Text proposed to be omitted from the current bylaw is struck with a line and shown in red text. Text proposed to be included in the amended bylaw is underlined and shown in blue text. We'll be going over the proposed amendments one section at a time. I ask that everyone please reserve their comments and questions until the section being discussed has been read completely. After which, I will ask for any comments from the Commission related to the section. Once the Commission has offered their comments, I will ask for comment from other town departments in attendance, again related to the current section. I will then open up discussion to the public in attendance related to that section only. If you wish to speak on the current section being discussed, please raise your hand and wait to be called. Once recognized, I'll then ask you to unmute so that you can address the Commission. Please direct your comments to the Commission through me, the chair, and do not directly address other participants from the public. Anyone acting disruptively or abusively or using poor language, we'll start with a warning and to let you know you're being disruptive. And then if you continue to act inappropriately, a second warning will be issued and then maybe get booted. if I ask politely. We ask that you please make your question or comment brief and refrain from asking questions that have previously been addressed. Feel free to mention that you support Mr. or Mrs. Joe Smith's points, but let's try to keep these things sort of one at a time. We don't need to hear the same thing more than once. When everyone who wishes to speak has had the chance, we'll move on to the reading of the next section and repeat the discussion in a similar format. Upon completion of discussion of all sections, there'll be an open Q&A for more general questions and after the read-through of all sections. And again, in the interest of time, please try not to repeat what's already been asked or pointed out or commented upon, and try to be a little bit mindful of how you speak so that everyone who wishes to has the chance and the time to speak. Okay, so that's the script. How's my audio? Everybody got all that? Great. All right. So then, Bill Holt, why don't you start up on our starters, and then, yeah, Bill, are you going to be our narrator?
Well, I'm going to share the screen. I thought maybe you could read through the sections. And
I'll do the narrating.
Again, this is the first section. So.
And then I didn't actually look. How are we doing for Concom attendance? Is everybody here?
That's a good question.
I see Bill.
It is here. Me. Minus Kevin.
There's me.
Ben here?
Yeah, so I don't see Ben.
Oh, sorry, Ben is not.
Ben is coming in.
Yep, coming in now.
Perfect. All right. So then, let's see. All right, Bill, so you'll just keep up with me as I read, I guess, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, off we go. Here we go. Good times. All right, section 95-1, the purpose. The purpose of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. The State Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, is intended to further the following purposes. 1, the protection of groundwater supply. 2, the protection of public and private water supply. 3, flood control. 4, storm damage prevention. 5, prevention of pollution. 6, protection of land containing shellfish. 7, protection of fisheries. And 8, protection of wildlife habitat. The special purpose of this wetlands bylaw. This bylaw is intended to utilize the town of Newbury's home rule authority to protect additional resource areas for additional values with additional standards and procedures stricter than those set forth in the State Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and specifically to provide enhanced protection to all coastal and inland wetlands for the following purposes. Thank you. Within coastal areas, to prevent storm damage, including coastal storm flowage, and to minimize environmental damage, loss of life resulting from storms, flooding, and erosion. Number 2, to minimize public health threats resulting from storm damage, including prevention of water pollution and protection of water quality. Number 3, to prevent loss or diminution of the beneficial functions of the values of storm and flood damage prevention or reduction and pollution prevention provided by wetlands, beaches, dunes, barrier beaches, and coastal banks. Number 4, to maintain vegetative buffers to wetlands and water bodies so as to reduce and or eliminate runoff and other non-point discharges of pollutants to protect public health and preserve environmental resources. And number 5, to maintain vegetative cover so that the integrity and stability of coastal dunes and banks are maintained and so that the coastal dunes and banks can fulfill their functions and promote the interests identified in Section 95-1A. And to provide enhanced, and number 6, to provide enhanced protection of the velocity zones and primary dunes of the Plum Island Barrier Beach and in other hazard-prone areas of the Plum Island Barrier Beach, consistent with Executive Order 181. Number 7, to provide protection to the Great Marsh area of critical environmental concern. And number 8, to protect coastal resiliency from sea level rise. That's yeah, we gotta fix that grammar. To protect coastal resiliency from sea level rise, and number 9, to protect and preserve the ecological function of all coastal wetland resources. Within inland areas, number 10, to protect all the purposes of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act as described in Section 95(1) purposes above, in addition to the following purposes. 11, to protect the ability of wetlands to mitigate effects of climate change by acting as carbon sinks. And number 12, to protect rare species habitat, including rare plant and animal species, including those not yet mapped by the NHESP, which is the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. And 13, to protect vernal pool habitat, including those not yet mapped by NHESP. And number 14, to protect and preserve the ecological function of all inland wetland resources. Whew. All right, we're rotating this script reading thing. All right, so to the commission first. Does anybody want to add, comment, subtract?
Brian, I'd like to make just a general comment.
Yeah.
I just think it might be helpful to understand that everyone understands that the existing bylaw applies only to Plum Island. This bylaw change is proposed to extend to the entire town, all coastal and inland wetlands in the entire town. And the reason that we felt it was important to have a bylaw that protected all resources in the town is because we wanted to have better consistency, among other things, in the way that the commission reviews projects, so that there's more certainty for applicants in understanding what it is that they are responsible for doing. Let's say file an application with the town. And also that we welcome all the feedback. We've added some additional jurisdiction and some additional interest to the purpose of this bylaw. And obviously that is just subject to public comment. So we welcome the comment.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other commissioners wish to chime in? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Just for clarification purposes.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
I would just say the commission has reviewed this just for public knowledge. So if the commission is not commenting, it's not that there isn't comment. It's we've had the opportunity to review this and process this. So that's why there might be silence. That's all.
It's fair. Thank you, Pete. Presuming then that nobody else has anything to say there. All right. So then let's go. Who's here from the town? Do we have any town departments? I read that script, but Bill Holt, do you recognize anybody? Anybody here on behalf of the town and any other departments to comment?
Unless Mario Carnavale is still there. I don't know if he's there for zoning or not.
Yes, I just jumped on just a couple minutes ago. I didn't hear the discussion.
Well, that's okay. We haven't really had one yet, so you're doing okay. So then, Mario,
Brian,
do you?
Brian.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Before you go to the public, do you want me to just go over the changes that we're proposing, the red line and the blue line, so it's pretty clear that what has been added?
No, I think that, I think I'd prefer just to see maybe by a show of hands or ayes or nays or whatever. I am running under the assumption that people are seeing this on their own screen, okay, and so they can see the color code as I go through. But is there anybody for whom that is not true, who would need an additional level of detail to see what the changes are?
speaking.
No? Anybody? All right, so then, yeah, Bill, I think we're good, because that means everybody should be able to follow along with the visual. All right, so yeah, let's go to public comment. I don't see anything. I see hands going up on screens. I don't see a commentary section down the side. So Bill, let's put you in charge of letting people in one at a time. Calling, because I'm not sure. I see
There are
see
currently
two
two
hands.
people with hands up.
I see James Stewart. I can unmute him if you'd like.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, so James Stewart, I live at 22 Old Point Road. And I have kind of a general question that I think Mary Rimmer might have touched on. Just for context, we were on yesterday a workshop discussing emergency access roads, and a general question came up and someone said, well, do the new wetland proposed bylaw changes impact Plum Island? And Bill Holt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you said no. And then Alicia Greco from the select board jumped in and she said, yeah, my understanding is it only impacts uplands and inlands and there's no changes to Plum Island. But then Lisa Mead jumped in and said, well, wait a minute, technically speaking, yes, but only from, I believe the words she used were a grammatical and clerical perspective, which left us all like, well, we don't know what that means. And so I thought maybe you could give us some baseline clarification that we could all understand. And I think the message to the public should be clear, because it seems like it's a little mixed right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And all of the things you heard were true. The proposed changes that we've made are targeted at the upland and inland spaces. But when we sent Lisa the draft of what we had, we did not distinguish between our new suggestions and the existing on the books law. And so Lisa went through and corrected and made comments on the existing standing law. And so she found a couple of spots where the grammar was off, where, you know, maybe the choice of wording could be better, that kind of thing. And so she provided those to us. And if we make any changes to the standing law, they wouldn't go beyond grammatical.
Well, we do have, we are adding some interests
Yes.
to the coastal areas. So I don't think
Right,
that's
but no,
entirely correct.
I think the question was, is it going to change? Is it going to eliminate the bylaw on Plum Island? And it's not. It's the bylaw for Plum Island, it still exists, and all the black text that's here is exactly what was in the bylaw. Actually, we are changing when it says only references Plum Island Barrier Beach. We're going to change that to all coastal, which includes the Plum Island Barrier Beach and inland wetlands. So we're not eliminating Plum Island from the bylaw or changing the content of the bylaw with respect to Plum Island. We're adding additional interests and additional language, but not necessarily taking anything away from the Plum Island bylaw as it is now.
And specific to, James, the project you're referencing with the emergency access, I don't think that there's a way that these modifications would really change anything there. Because I think that was part of your question.
I appreciate that, and I'm not asking you to address any particular project. It was a general question only, in all due respect for what's going on here.
I think one of the only substantive changes in the Plum Island section is really, other than, like we said, grammatical corrections, which we'll get to later in the text, but these two or three new interests that are being added, and it's something that the commission always considers anyway as part of their review of projects, but to just codify them in the bylaw, it seemed useful, especially in light of the, climate issues and sea level rise concerns on a barrier island. We felt it was important that ultimately there may be some regulations that are adopted with respect to this in the future, which would be allowed through this language in the bylaw. We don't have any particular regulations in mind at this point, but we thought it would be helpful to have language in the bylaw that allowed us to adopt such regulations if we needed to.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, Mary. It's not something we have in mind, but in theory, yeah, you're right. That would, in theory, but it's something we're doing anyway. So
it just gives the town and the commission more flexibility to be able to respond to the different projects that have different circumstances because of changing sea level rise.
Okay, great. Who's next?
Looks like is it Bob Connors?
Yes, yes, it is. Can everyone hear me?
Coming through great.
Okay, great. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name's Bob Connors. I reside at 39 Annapolis Way, Newbury. On behalf of concerned residents on Plum Island and in Old Town and in Byfield, I wanted to provide some comments on the proposed wetlands bylaw changes. Just for some empirical history, on April 26, 2005, town meeting voted 395-6 to repeal the 2001 existing wetlands bylaw, which was deemed draconian and punitive to Newbury property owners, and adopted the current bylaw. So the original bylaw was repealed, it wasn't amended. I was part of that effort. I wanted to share too, before town meeting, there was a spirited discussion among many residents about the need for a local wetlands bylaw, as state law only requires towns and cities to comply with CMR 310, the State Wetland Protection Act. The concern that many have is to further restrict property owners before an updated master plan is putting the cart before the horse. The proposed amendments to the current wetlands bylaw should be tabled until Newbury's master plan is updated to allow all Newbury residents to assess the full impacts to property owners throughout our community. I just wanted to share that and get that on the record. My suggestion is do not open Pandora's box. Work with what you have, because the result may very well be an effort to repeal the entire wetland bylaw and revert back to simply 310 CMR. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I like the brevity and the to the pointness. All right. Any other hands in the air?
It's like Melissa Goldner. Oops, sorry.
Hi. Yes, Melissa Goldner. I live at 19 Pearson Drive in Byfield, and I just wanted to express my support and my gratitude for, and sorry, because my dog is barking, for including Byfield and the inlands in the bylaw. I think it's incredibly important. I'm incredibly concerned about climate change for my children, and I think that it's really important that we protect all of the wetlands in Newbury, not just those on Plum Island. So thank you so much for this.
Beautiful. This is great. Everybody.
Mark Sarkady. Sorry to interrupt you there, Brian. Mark Sarkady also has his hand up.
Thank you very much for recognizing me. My name is Mark Sarkady. I live at 50 Northern Boulevard. I've lived here for 35 years in the town, and I love this town and I love this island. I'm here to speak because I'm quite concerned about what you're calling the need for stricter regulation. I don't understand from what you've said thus far what the problem is. I understand there are challenges with climate change. I'm the president of the Plum Island Foundation, and I actually work to address those climate changes in a very real way up and down the island. However, I perceive the direction of this, as well as section 3 below, as an incursion on our property rights, and in a certain way kind of anti-American. It means that people will be restricted in a way that, from my point of view, doesn't make sense. But I would say that it's not just my point of view that actually is important. What's more important is that many people in both Newbury and Plum Island are quite concerned about this direction of regulations. In fact, a number of people called me this afternoon concerned that this meeting was going on and that they were not aware of it. I don't understand, and I would like someone to answer this, please, why we need something in addition to 310 and the current regulations. In addition, I would just say that I think there will be a storm coming to the town meeting to talk about this. This is not something that is what people perceive as why they came to Plum Island or Newbury, nor is it American in a way. So I urge you to please reconsider this before taking this to town meeting. I would also like to support what Mr. Connor said regarding seeing a master plan and then understanding what the implications of these regulations would be. It's very hard to actually see them abstractly. Below, there are a number of added regulations in blue regarding things like paving driveways, a shed on the side of the house, etc. I just urge you, please, to reconsider where you're going here, because I think you're going to find an uproar. But I would like an answer, please. What is the need specifically? What is the need or problem that is generating this more strict approach? I'd like someone to please answer that question. All I heard so far was a greater consistency of the way proposals would be considered by the Commission. Greater consistency might be desirable, but that's not a problem that merits this level of restriction. So would someone please tell me why these are being proposed specifically and what is the problem they're intended to solve, please? Thank you very much.
Beautiful. We can get to answering that question. I just want to see if there's anybody else who's going to lead in, with a similar line of. Well, no, I just want to make sure that anybody who's going to sort of generally, say, reconsider, take it off the table, we get all of that on the floor first before we go to answer that, so we're not repeating ourselves. So, Bill, anybody else with their hand in the air?
I think Patty raised her hand, but I can't find her on the screen. Can anyone, Kathy, can you see Patty's?
Can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Okay, I can't get my camera working, so we'll have to just do it this way. May I speak?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. My name is Patty Schuler. I live at 6 Independence Way, Newbury, which is on Plum Island. And I would strongly support both Mark and Bob's approach. I as well had the same question when I was reading this as to why we are putting restrictions in place. What problem are we solving? I do watch many of your meetings, and I've been very concerned the last several watching the iterations of this bylaw change. And I would agree with Mark that there are many people in Newbury that are not going to just sit back and watch further regulations upon our property rights. I think people should stand up and take notice as to what just recently happened in Newburyport, when an uninformed city councilor, doesn't live out here, decided to put some regulations in place without even consulting the people affected or the city councilor that represented them. So, this is not something that is going to go down easily here. You are adding further restrictions here on Plum Island. When I read things like, hold on 1 minute here. Rare plant and animal species, including those not yet named. Vernal pool habitat, not yet mapped or identified. I understand you think that it's adding flexibility. We, on the other hand, who are, value our property rights, look at it as you having more teeth to regulate exactly what property owners do. And people inland and upland should fully understand what a town bylaw will do to them as well, so that when they go to put in their patio, their pool, their fence, change their driveway, they will have to come before your commission. And, you folks, we have plenty of regulation, feds and state, and do not need further regulation. So I urge all of the property owners in Newbury to understand that increased and stricter regulation may impact your property rights as well as your property values. So everyone pay attention to what's going on here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patty. And like I said to Mark, we'll address these comments sort of all together, because I think, we can answer them all in one go. And the different commissioners are all going to have slightly different things that they're going to bring to the table to help answer that. But let's keep going with this initial round of commentary. Bill, who's next?
I think I saw Dan Linden first.
All right, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, Brian, so I think you're looking for folks' opinions that are against these proposed changes, right? So I'm not going to say too much because I'm in support. But I want to point out, I believe you guys started by saying that not many changes were going to happen to current regulations on Plum Island, right? This is affecting residents in Newbury that are not on Plum Island. So as one of those residents, I'm speaking up for the residents not on Plum Island that are in support of these changes. Thanks.
All right, Dan, you just set the speed record.
And I think the last person I see is Steve Desalvo.
There, I think I'm unmuted. Good evening. My name is Steve Desalvo. I am the owner of 16 Northern Boulevard in Newbury. And although I understood, Brian, that you wanted us to restrict our comments to the specific section that we were discussing, obviously we've sort of gone beyond that. And so thank you for your
we're doing an introductory section of everything too.
And so
okay.
I would just like to say that I'm trying to reconcile your comments about there being no, I guess you used the qualification, major changes intended through this draft with my reading of it, and I haven't reconciled those two yet, and so I stand in support of comments by Bob Connors and Mark Sarkady and Patty recently until I can see that that in fact is the case, because in my reading of it, it doesn't appear to be so, but I think my particular concerns are going to come in the next section. But just since you've tolerated these broader comments, I figured I'd chime in now and be on the record, and then reserve my right to ask questions when we get into the next section. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Bill, anybody else? I'm not seeing any on the screen.
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, so.
Okay. So then I'll take my turn first, and then I'll go to the rest of the commissioners. The thing that would change, right, especially the inland stuff, is that for instance, vernal pools would be regulated. The example that was used about vernal pools that have not yet been documented. In a manner of speaking, vernal pools have this value, right? And the way that they're currently regulated through the state is not at all. And, I'm using this as an example, I'm going with it because most people I know appreciate the sound of spring peepers, and they appreciate having, the amphibians in the spring and having them in the summer. And, nobody is anti-frog that I know of. And the value of vernal pools is that these are the nurseries for those sorts of creatures. And so in a manner of speaking, if you like the sound of spring peepers, then you need to have vernal pools. And, it's an oversimplification in many ways. But the reason that we want to bring this up is that they're important. And as far as I know, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, I don't think there are any vernal pools on the island. And so that, sort of doesn't apply. The stuff that does apply, the regulation issue, what we see in the commission is frequently very similar issues that we need to talk to an applicant about, that we need to talk to their representatives about, and it sort of uses up time that everybody would like to have back. And we know the answer before the applicant comes to our table. We can give them the answer ahead of time, right? And the way we're thinking about this is by using the regulations. We can go through specifics, but an easy one might simply be when your planting plan comes in and you're doing some kind of revegetation of some sort. We are going to talk about the species being chosen being native. And we have this conversation probably every meeting in one way or another. And so we always end up moving the species to native from introduced species. And that's something that we could put in the regulations so that the landscape architect, the gardener, the consultant, they won't bother trying something that won't work. And so this, in theory, saves everybody time and money and energy. And again, that's a simple example, but that's sort of what we have in mind with the regulations, is to answer questions that we know we're going to get before we get them. It's, in a manner of speaking, regulation sometimes sounds like a four-letter word, but that's what we have in mind. And I'm going to turn now, we'll go to the commission, we'll just do open the floor to the commission. And if you guys want to sort of chime in and add to that, or clarify points you think they're too broad, by all means. No?
I can jump in, Brian. I have a couple of thoughts, and I just wanted to clarify that the purpose of these bylaw amendments is not to take private property. It's actually to protect wetlands, and that the functions of the wetlands that we're proposing to provide enhanced protection for are important for property values and important for the community because they provide important functions for flood control. Wetlands provide immense flood control, storm damage prevention, attenuation of pollution, groundwater recharge. They serve important functions. So I think hopefully we can all agree that they're important to protect in the community. The problem that the commission was having with the current setup is that under the state regulations, the work within wetlands is generally restricted anyway by state rules. There's under only very limited circumstances are you allowed to directly impact a wetland. But the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction within 100 feet of those wetlands. And the state regulations are quite vague in terms of what is allowed and not allowed within that 100-foot, we call it the buffer zone. And it presents over and over issues every time a property owner submits a proposal. There's a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not a project can be approved because the buffer zone is a discretionary area that's up to the commission to decide whether a particular project meets the performance standards under the current state rules. And it can vary from commission member to commission member. Commission members change over time. And so by adopting a bylaw that provides an opportunity to enact regulations that can establish some sort of a consistent message so that when people plan for a project and submit a project, they would know, if I do this, this, and this, my project is likely to be approved. I don't want to spend time on it, survey and engineering and consultants, and not be able to get a project approved once I submit to the Conservation Commission. So one of the big impetuses for doing this is in order to create some sort of a regulation that would establish rules where if you're working within a certain distance from a wetland, provided you provide an adequate buffer, whether it's 25 feet, 35 feet, 50 feet, it varies a lot from town to town. And most of the surrounding communities do have local wetland bylaws as well. And we've looked at those and considered all of those as part of this process. So I think that when you're considering property values, you need to factor in not just the potential loss of use of part of your land. Those are areas where they're generally suitable to be building on anyway. So we're just trying to establish a reasonable amount of protection for the resources that are already there. And in terms of the vernal pools that aren't currently mapped, or rare species habitat that's not currently mapped, those are things that we can certainly consider pulling out or amending to make that language more clear for people. The idea was just that the mapping that is relied upon to make those distinctions about whether or not an area is a vernal pool or not lags behind the actual what's happening in the field sometimes. So it's just in order to, they're already protected anyway. We're not adding really a lot of protection for them. They're already protected under the regulations. We're just identifying that those exist, whether or not they are certified by the state or not. So hopefully that answers a couple of the questions that came up.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, Ben, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I want to thank Mary for some really great comments. And just to provide, I think I would add an example for what Mary was talking about at the very end there. For some people who might not, and maybe it'll be still a little opaque about whether or not they're designated, is something like a vernal pool. If we have a vernal pool on a property that hasn't been mapped yet, because nobody's had any reason to be out there to map it yet, and the project comes before us in the fall, we're not going to be able to tell for sure if it's a vernal pool or not. And then we're going to say, we might say, hey, we think this is a vernal pool. The other people are going to say, it's not mapped. And we're going to say, well, we're not going to be able to get it mapped till spring. So do you want to wait till, it ends up being a lot of confusion. And we just want to get that clarified right from the start that this is a vernal pool, and we're going to consider it a vernal pool rather than have to wait till the spring to classify stuff and get caught up with long delays to projects. People don't, like Mary was saying, people don't want long delays. They want to pay for their project, pay for the engineering, get it permitted and move forward. And having a clear set of rules and expectations helps facilitate that. And I would just add on to what she said is, like right now I'm wearing a Surfland bait and tackle hat. That's a company, a long standing town business that relies on anglers, and the anglers are here because there's fish here. And that all ties back into all the wetlands that feed into the Parker River and all the fish that come out of that river, and everything is linked together. So if we don't do things to make sure that whole system, when we have a statement like, we want to preserve the ecological function of a wetland, it's not because we want to do a ton of overreach. We just want to make sure that the aesthetic values and the recreation that drive so much of our local economy, and the reason I think a lot of people move here, along with other things, is because it's a beautiful place with abundant fish and wildlife and birds. And I was out on the river today and saw like 6 different species of duck, a bald eagle, some seals. That's all part of what we're doing here and trying to make sure is here for us, our kids, and future generations. So I think that it's not that we're looking to do a lot of jurisdictional overreach. We're just looking to make sure that these values are here. and preserved.
Thank you, Ben. Which river were you on? Did you say you saw seal?
Yeah, they're right in front of your house, man. Like just downstream of your house, there's a harbor, a mother harbor seal, and a pup, which was weird.
Oh, that's so cool.
But then maybe that means the herring are starting to run. They've poked their heads in a few places south of Boston last week, so maybe they're just starting to run here.
Cool. All right, that's off topic, but I had to ask.
Sorry.
All right, thanks. Anybody else on the commission side? Pete, Bill?
Sure, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a couple of things. First, I'd like to compliment the previous commissioners who have spoken because they've nailed some very important points. I think what people need to understand is the commission looked at bylaws from surrounding communities which have similar concerns. And so we just didn't randomly come up with anything. We kind of were very judicious in looking at other communities which have similar dynamics. So there was a review of surrounding bylaws of communities to help guide and recommendations. This really gives consistency to the commission, and I think it was mentioned rather than when commissioners change, there might be a difference of opinion. It is structure. It allows for transparency, quite honestly, because there's a knowledge base which is consistent. And on the comment of waiting for the master plan to then back into this, that would actually really delay the activities and congest the commission and the important work that it needs to do. I do not have a date of when the master plan would be done. I would love to have it done by now, but it's not done. And to wait for another very important segment of the town based upon a segment that's still a work in progress, really doesn't make sense to me. If we can draw consistency, draw conclusion to this to give better direction to the commission, which then helps the community overall, as was described by the other commissioners, which then preserves the integrity of the community because the wetlands are so vitally important to the community. It's the direction that the commission thinks is very important. So it's not in any way overreaching, it's actually protecting the interest. That's what I get. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. All right, Bill, you look like last man standing. You want to chime in or you good?
I'm good.
No, not you, Bill Holt. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill Lord,
Bill Lord.
Our quiet commissioner. Bill Lord, are you muted? Bill Lord, hold on. Your mouth is moving, but nothing's happening.
Yeah, he's dialed in on the phone.
I can't see his phone anymore.
I see it down at the bottom.
Yeah,
and you're forgetting about Dan too.
Where's Dan?
He's here.
Oh, Dan, you don't have your screen on.
Yeah, the video is sort of, I've been shut down. It's hard to come up with anything to add to what's already been said here. Some very good comments. I don't have anything to add.
Thanks, Dan. Sorry, I didn't see it. Bill Lord, is your phone on? Are you the 603-396? Yeah. Kathy, can we unmute him?
I'm trying to right now, but I can't figure out how to do it.
I think it's *6 or *9.
I think it's
for Bill, *6 or *9, I think.
Yeah, it might be. You might have to type that in.
*9.
Bill, you'll have to do *9 on your phone.
All right. Bill's happy. Sorry, Bill. When you get your tech figured out, let us know and we can come back to you. We can circle back. Okay. Well, that being said, do we want to move on to the next section? And maybe I'm just going to assign somebody else to read because that was terrible. Ben, you read the next section. We'll do this alphabetically.
95-2, jurisdiction. Except as permitted in writing by the commission or as provided in this bylaw, no person shall engage in the following activities. Removal, filling, dredging, discharging into, building upon, discharging into or otherwise it's altering or degrading any coastal or inland wetland resource or buffer zone thereto, as defined in 310 CMR 10 as sequence as the same may be amended, as well as the following additional resource areas and the 100-foot buffer zone thereto. The additional resource areas being 1, vernal pool habitat, regardless of size, location, or certification status, and 2, isolated vegetated wetlands that are at least 2,500 square feet in size, and 3, the Great Marsh area of critical environmental concern. This bylaw is intended to utilize the town's home rule authority to provide additional protection to the barrier beach and to land subject to coastal storm flowage, to coastal and inland wetland resources, and to the buffer zone thereto, to provide the purposes identified in 95-1B above, and to provide additional performance standards that are more specific and more stringent than those set forth in the State Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the accompanying regulations 310 CMR 10. Written application shall be filed with the Commission to perform activities on the portion of the Plum Island Barrier Beach located within the town of Newbury, and no activities affecting the portion of the Plum Island Barrier Beach located within the town of Newbury shall commence without applying for, obtaining, and complying with an order of conditions or determination of applicability in accordance with the performance standards set forth in this bylaw, except as expressly permitted pursuant to a variance granted in accordance with 95-5. The Commission shall issue orders of conditions or determinations of applicability in accordance with the performance standards set forth in this bylaw. 95-2.1, regulated activities. Activities subject to regulation under this bylaw include the following. 1, any activity proposed or undertaken within a resource area or buffer zone as described above in section 95-2. 2, any activity deemed by the Commission as likely to have a significant or cumulative adverse effect upon resource areas as defined herein. 3, any activity, including but not limited to any and all of the following activities when undertaken to, upon land within the 100-foot buffer thereto, affecting resources or their wetland values as determined by the Commission, including but not limited to A, removal, excavation, or dredging of soil, sand, gravel, or aggregate materials of any kind. B, changing of pre-existing drainage characteristics, flushing characteristics, salinity distribution, sedimentation patterns, flow patterns, or flood retention characteristics. C, drainage or other disturbance of water level or other table. D, dumping, discharging, or filling with any material which may degrade water quality. E, placing of fill or removal of material which would alter elevation. F, driving of piles, erection, expansion, or significant alteration of buildings or structures of any kind. G, placing of obstructions or objects in water or the surface water or groundwater hydrology of any resource area. H, destruction of removal of plant life, including but not limited to cutting or trimming of trees and shrubs. Bill, I'll give you a chance to scroll down now. Thank you. I, changing temperature, biochemical, oxygen demand, or other physical, biologic. That looks like a typo right there, folks. J, any activities, changes, or work that may cause or tend to contribute to pollution of any body of water or groundwater. And K, incremental activities that cause or may cause a cumulative adverse effect on the resource areas and the values and interests protected by this bylaw.
Nice job, Ben.
A little stuffy, so thanks for bearing with me.
I mean, you could have bailed. You didn't have to, so I appreciate it. All right, so same pattern. I'm presuming the commission doesn't have anything particular to say about that. So, oh, Mary, you do. Go for it.
Yeah, so if you scroll back, Bill, to the beginning of that section that that Ben just read, I think, okay, right there, well, a little higher. right there. It's the second paragraph of the old bylaw where it says written application shall be filed with the commission to perform activities on the portion of Plum Island Barrier Beach. I think we need to change that. We're now proposing to do this. Isn't this supposed to be for all?
Is that
Correct.
where we missed?
Yeah,
Change
must have missed. So you want to change Plum Island Barrier Beach to
Yep.
coastal and inland?
All coastal and inland wetlands located in the town of Newbury. Yeah.
Oops. What do I want to put? Oops, sorry.
While we're typing here, just for people in the audience, I want to be, I think I'll just start off by saying that these lengthy lists of things that we're listing off are really things that if you were brought, as we said with the last section, they were brought before us right now, we would say you can't, there'd be a lot of issues around that.
These are also not, these regulated activities were taken from another bylaw. We didn't make these up either.
Yeah, we
So
didn't make these up. These are conformed.
These are taken from Ipswich. I do think that where it talks about vernal pools of any size, I think that we should establish a size limit for a vernal pool, because I mean, wood frogs can lay eggs in a spare tire. So that seems like we need to just, put some boundaries on that.
I think that maybe we missed editing that, because I remember having that exact spare tire conversation there.
Yeah.
In the previous meeting.
And then yeah, vernal pool habitat.
Do you want to
just take out regardless of size?
I mean, Mary, do we want to talk about like the idea of the tire, or do you want to talk about the idea of, the teeny tiny, footprint puddles?
Either one. I mean, I think, we can just leave it as vernal pool habitat and use some discretion in determining what that is, or we could establish a minimum size.
Yeah.
You're talking about pools that, right now, vernal pool habitat is protected when they occur in another wetland. And they're not protected if they don't occur within an isolated land subject to flooding, which has to be a 1/4 acre foot in size for a flood storage capacity. So this is intended to capture vernal pools which don't fall under those categories. They're not going to be very many of them, but they might exist. And I think that it's only fair to establish some kind of a minimum size that they have to be actually, significant as habitat.
Yeah, the example I'm thinking of is, when people go out and they do their soil explorations and they leave little holes behind, if those filled in and they held water,
those
those
are
be
not,
a vernal pool, right? But we never call it vernal pool habitat. It's an accident.
Right. So, I mean, I would say, 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet or something like that. Maybe you want to be consistent with the isolated vegetated wetlands there.
Don't know the answer on that one, but yeah, no, point taken.
We can talk some more about that.
Yeah. We'll leave that one. That can be our last thing that we make up our minds about. So, anybody else commission-wise on this end? Dan, Ben, Pete, Bill?
There's just letter J down there that was an incomplete sentence that we need to figure out.
Yeah, we have to. Let's highlight it.
Oh, maybe it was, sorry, I.
Yeah, I'll have to check back and see if I trying truncated that by mistake.
All right, well, Bill, while you're working on that one, nothing else from the rest of the commission, going once, twice, 3 times. All right. So then anybody from the town who's here that wants to chime in on that?
James Stewart
Take that
has
as a
his
no.
hand raised.
Yeah, so Mr. Stewart's got dibs on first member of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back up to the 95-2, I'm just still confused about the blueprint around the 2500 bullet point number 2. Is that a change to the current Plum Island? We thought it was 5,000. And so we'd just like a clarification on an isolated vegetated wetland. Are you changing the metrics on that?
They don't exist right now in the current bylaw. There's no protection for them.
Oh, so this is just a new, completely new thing.
Yep. So this would be primarily in inland areas, not the coastal areas, where you have a pocket wetland that's not connected to a stream or another water body. And they can be very important, but they don't qualify for protection under the current state rules, and they're not part of the current bylaw. So this would be an additional resource that would be protected under the bylaw.
So that is, to be clear, a new change to Plum Island.
No. No, because
we both said, right? Because if there was an isolated vegetated wetland that was 2,500 square feet somewhere on Plum Island, then it would become regulated.
You could maybe have an interdunal small isolated wetland, and I suppose that's possible. So that would be something we want to consider if that's going to affect the Plum Island bylaw. Maybe we don't want to have that. I just think that it's going to. Don't want to mix the message if we're not intending not to mess with Plum Island and change the rules on Plum Island. Then that's something that maybe the commission wants to consider. Because I guess that's true. It could be possible that there could be an isolated wetland that might meet that criteria on Plum Island.
That would be great.
Just to use an example.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
To use as an example, like what about when you go down into the refuge and you go down to the second parking area and you walk by that cranberry bog, that's off on one side of that little sign up. In theory, if the park wanted to do something to that space, I mean, I'm assuming that's a wetland. Who knows if it actually is, former cranberry bog. But you need something that's
thank you for hearing me out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point because you're right. Technically, it would apply to the island, but from what the commission knows about the island and our own, past forays into regulating projects out there, we don't see anywhere where there would be one of those. Because you need an empty house lot that was a wetland, basically, as big as that.
There are a couple pockets like that.
But they're very small.
Are they 2,500 square feet?
Possibly. Yeah, that one near 12th Street is.
Yeah, so Tom mentioned that today at a site walk, and it's approximately 1,400 square feet, I think he said.
Okay, so wouldn't be big enough. Yeah.
It wouldn't. Yeah. He mentioned a couple others that were quite small as well, that he knows about on the island as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah, when we talked about the size limit, we thought it was reasonable. We weren't even, I remember we weren't thinking about Plum Island, and I remember as we were talking about this, going through calculations on how big it would have to be to get the square footage. And I was like, going back to that, I'm like, I don't think of anything on Plum Island that I've seen or looked at on aerial maps that jumps out at me as being big enough.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we could think about
we can look into that a little bit more and see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in a manner of speaking, if we find the biggest isolated vegetated wetland on Plum Island and just do the math and do the calculation. We just move the number from 2,500 to 2,750 or 3,000, you know, because, you know, as we've been saying, the point of this isn't to do anything more on the island, you know, and so, yeah, like to your point, Mr. Stewart, you know, we can work with that one.
Yeah, and just to be perfectly transparent, like the point of it was to set a floor that we thought was reasonable for ecological function and value. We weren't looking to do every little thing. We're looking to do things that are big enough to matter, as Mary was saying.
If I can jump in here, this section is about jurisdiction. And so as far as Plum Island goes, there's jurisdiction everywhere already. So perhaps if there was an isolated wetland on Plum Island, it's already within our jurisdiction to review it. So that's important to keep in mind.
Yep. Good point.
Great. Who's next? Bill, who's next on your list?
Melissa Goldner.
Hi, thanks again. Unfortunately, I have to jump off to another meeting, so I just wanted to comment specifically on this section, but in general, I again greatly appreciate that you are taking the time to apply these to the inlands. As a resident on Pearson Drive in Byfield, I think it's incredibly important that we protect our wetlands and our endangered species. I would urge the commission to be as aggressive as possible when it comes to protecting our wetlands and our vernal pools. We can't get them back when they're gone. We have ever increasing drought due to climate change, and these species and these habitats are incredibly important for our community and for our environment in the long run. I grew up on a barrier island. I understand the concerns of the residents of Plum Island, but watching that island slowly erode, I wish there had been more regulation for the building on that barrier island. So again, I know your intention is not to further regulate Plum Island, but I don't want the concerns of the citizens on Plum Island to prevent the Newberry and Byfield from being environments from being protected as well. So thank you again so much. I apologize, I have to jump off. Hopefully I will jump back on to hear the end.
Well, thanks for coming. We appreciate all the input we can get. All right, Bill, who's next? I see Mark and Dan. Who went first?
And I also have Dan Linden. So I'll go to Dan Linden first because I saw his hand.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, so just addressing the minimum size for vernal pools discussion, I just want to point out, the point about wood frogs breeding in a tire makes sense. You probably won't get wood frogs in a tire in the middle of a desert, right? But if you have a complex of vernal pools, they may not be within a jurisdictional wetland. They could be intermixed with uplands. And in fact, that is kind of the point of vernal pools, right? They're ephemeral. They may not be connected to a permanent wetland. And so if you set some minimum size, what I'm saying is you could really lop off the fringe of vernal pool habitat because each individual pool itself may not meet some minimum size. So I like the idea of having, it'd be up to the discretion of the commission as opposed to being regulated in terms of an exact size. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah,
Mark?
I was thinking about it too. If we use the word natural, maybe that's an answer to that, so that we don't end up with any accidental pools. But we'll come back to that one probably.
They have to be big enough and deep enough to be able to hold water for long enough of a period of time to actually allow the creatures to metamorphose into the next phase. So if they're too small, they dry out too fast and they're not good quality habitat. So there's the little ones often aren't very very high quality.
Yeah.
And that's
The little
that's
ones are
fine.
more sink than source.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to that one. Mark, I think you're the last man on this one.
Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, you're coming in.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So just a few quick points. I just want to be clear that how I feel and Bob feels and Steve feel is we love the island and the wetlands and the natural environment. We actually actively work to promote and protect those things. So I don't want my comments or their comments to be characterized as that we're not interested. I'm not sure you're doing that, but I'm just explaining. We care about the things you folks are putting forward. You know, I've formed major environmental organizations in the United States and around the world and work with the UN on protecting environments around the world. So we're in favor of that. But I honestly feel that what you're doing tonight is you're not seeking our input. You're seeking to sell us what you've got. If you look down the list, can you scroll down, please, to that list of the blue things that are listed a little bit below the border here? Thank you. A little farther. Okay, farther, please. Thank you. So when you say things like an H, removal of plant life, and but not limited to cutting or trimming, it's like, I can't cut and trim my own trees and shrubs. You know, in number A, I mean, there are certain normal things that happen in the maintenance of a property that you're outlawing or making us go for permits for. So I just say to you, if you're really interested in our input and you're really interested in our feeling that you're overreaching, come find out what we are saying and make adjustments. I don't feel you're doing that tonight. I feel you're trying to sell us what you've done. And by me, you didn't adequately answer the question of why we need these. So if you put us in the position of you not listening to our input, which by the way, diminishes our trust in the process, then we're going to question the whole thing rather than elements of it. And you're going to put yourself in that position where people are going to question the whole thing you're trying to do, which by the way, probably isn't good because some of the things you're trying to do are good. But the way you're approaching this puts me in the position of saying, I've got to oppose the whole thing if I oppose parts of it. So I would just urge you to think about that in terms of how you go forward. Because if you don't respond to our concerns, and by the way, this does not look like it's not a change on Plum Island. That's not how I perceive it as someone who's lived here 35 years. Okay, and I don't think other people will perceive it that way either. Unless there's some clarity around that Plum Island stays the same, which it doesn't seem like it does, some clarity about some responsiveness to our concerns about these things, you put us in the position where we feel like you're over controlling. And no matter how many times you tell me you're not over controlling, that will never convince me that you're not over controlling. What will convince me is if you try to find out my concerns and the concerns of other people and adjust what you're putting forward from that perspective. So I urge you to do that, or you're going to face our opposition. And I'm sorry to say that to you. You're my fellow citizens and neighbors. I care about the work you do. I care about this town. The whole town, not just the island. But again, you're putting us in that position. So I'd ask you to think about that, please. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Mark. Bill, hold the screen there for a second. Just because I'm curious, Mark, if you'd contribute some more thoughts to that H, you know, because I know why it's there and I know why it was in the Ipswich law that Mary pulled from. But, your perspective, your specific reading of that, how would you change it so that it actually achieved its goal rather than, what you're perceiving the goal to be? Because I think, hopefully you noticed when we were talking about the isolated wetlands, we were trying to avoid Plum Island, not dealing with, adding things to Plum Island. But as, Dan pointed out, we had a confusion there where we were not thinking of the isolated wetland in terms of Plum Island. And once it was pointed out that there arguably are isolated wetlands that might meet that threshold, we're like, oh, all right, we'll move that number so we get off the Plum Island issue, even though the whole island in one way or another seems to be jurisdictional. So like we made that mistake and we acknowledged it here and we went to change it, sort of live, at the moment. And so, hopefully that gives you the sense that we are trying not to add things to the island. And, H, you pointed out, is having an issue with, and, by all means, get into the weeds because, we're live editing this as we go. So, if there's something about that you think would make it work so that it's more protecting plant life rather than impinging on gardening, by all means.
That's a very important point, Brian. This is a working process right now. This is not an ultimatum. We're here to try to get feedback so we can work through this process, not force any one concept at someone. So please, Mark, don't take that sort of a position because that's not the intention of the commission. This is a dialogue right now.
Okay, Pete, I appreciate what you're saying. It doesn't entirely feel that way, but let me give you my comments though, so maybe you can think about it, okay? So I think in this number 3 here, there should be some mention of normative activities that people do when they own homes and have property.
Yeah.
People cut shrubs, people trim trees. I mean, I do. I can't imagine that people don't. People do move things around in materials, sand, gravel, soil. They fill in stuff in their driveways. I mean, you're not in any way mentioning or noting the normative activities that people have. And so when I look at the history of things, it doesn't improve my trust with you. I'm just trying to, that's just real life for people, okay? We have normative activities. And, other bodies like yourselves use things like this to introduce something, and then they build on this, and the next time it's more controlled, okay? And we're telling you, we're watching, and we, work with us here a little bit. Respect the normative activities of homeowners. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Mark, we take your point because a lot of conversations I've had with people informally who, ask what they can and can't do, gardening, I say, if it's gardening, if it counts as maintenance, we're not going to bother you about it. Once you go beyond, what you use the word normative for, once you go beyond that kind of thing is when often you'll trigger something. Unfortunately, we can't use the word normative because I don't know, norms are different for everybody. But
try to find language. I'm sorry, Brian, I apologize.
Well, no, I just want to, reassert what Pete said is that, this is live and, this is what we're here for, is not to steamroll you, but to get the input that we need so that you can still oppose certain things. Like, by all means, I'm not trying to tell you the whole thing, but as you led with, that first statement, we're trying to get as much as we can, as well as we can, in the greatest quality we can, right? Like, we're not trying to do everything. I know there's a handful of things in here that, they don't work for some people, and that's fine. And it's okay to disagree, but, I would like your input, and I would like, if possible, to see language of your choice incorporated into things where you are pointing them out as being problematic.
Well, I
need language to work with.
I don't know right now tonight the exact language, but what I'm trying to protect is the normative or normal regular functions of people in households that don't get restricted by language that's overly broad and overly limiting.
I think we can add another category of activities that are allowed without permission or something like that. But keep in mind, these are activities that are only in the buffer zone to wetlands. So, you're cutting trees and doing other things that are outside of wetlands. That's not part of the commission's jurisdiction. It's just that area of jurisdiction that they have. And the closer you are to the wetland, the more concerning it is potentially. And what we're trying to avoid is, just giving the impression that any cutting of vegetation is okay. It tends to, people tend to take advantage anyway. So, but I understand what you're saying. We should maybe consider a category that is allowable activities, or to place some limits on things like what cutting and trimming of trees and shrubs. Even if we just said, with the exception of pruning, of maintenance of existing landscape plantings and that kind of thing, then obviously that that may cover some of it. But we can
Sorry.
maybe work that language a little bit better in that section.
Yeah, I'm just asking, think about what people who sweat and work their whole lives to get a home on a beautiful place like this, what we think about, okay? The other thing I note to you folks, I happened to find out about this meeting by accident. I found out about it 2 hours before the meeting started. I know loads of other people who would have wanted to be involved. And if you don't talk to those people ahead of town meeting, you will talk to them at town meeting. And that's what you'll have to deal with. You know, I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm trying to explain to you what people think and feel and how agitated people are. As someone referred to earlier, someone did some restrictive attempts in Newburyport on Ordinance 69 and 71, I think are the numbers. And that led to a semi-rebellion by people, all right? So I don't know if you want that. I don't think you want that.
Yeah, no, point taken, Mark, on all those. And, you know, we, to the extent we can, you know, we don't exactly have a Facebook account or an Instagram account, so it's not as easy to reach out as, you know, in some other ways. But Ben's being very patient.
Brian, could I ask you, Brian, I'm just curious, and I won't keep interrupting, but how did you let people know about this meeting?
That's actually a question for Bill. Other than conversational stuff and what was posted in the paper, I don't know the answer. Bill Holt, you got one?
That's
more than
the prescribed method of notification for any permit, and for this type of bylaw amendment is we have to notify the public in paper. We can't obviously send out certified mailings to the entire population of Newbury. We don't have the money for that. So you advertise as legal requirement, which is what we did. We advertised 7 days ahead of time. We also put it on the website.
Well, no one knows to check the website, Bill. But it was mentioned. In other words, you put out one notification a week ahead of time.
Can I go finally? Can I possibly finally go? So Mark, I want to start off by saying thank you for everything you've said. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I understand. I should have stopped earlier because I thought to myself as I was reading everything that we never checked back to ask Mark if our answer to his previous question was adequate. So sorry for not coming back to that. And we're trying very hard to listen to you and not sell you on things. And I appreciate everything you've just said to us. And I'm really trying to consider that. So we've been doing this process since I think September. There's been a lot, and unfortunately, I mean, there's a town like Ipswich has an Instagram account. They put stuff on their Instagram account. I think that's great. I think that's a new modern way to get the word out. You can have town Facebook's accounts. We can't make that happen. It's not within our power. I think it'd be great for it to be there. What we have done is had every time there's been a meeting where we've talked about this, it's been on the agenda. You can sign up for email alerts with the town. That's what, unfortunately, the system that we're stuck with. I wish there were a better system, but we can't reinvent the wheel. And I think this is the third draft of this document that's been on our website. I think the first draft went up in either mid-December or early January. So we've had a working draft in some form of this document on our website for months as we've gone through it. And we've had a couple other meetings where we've had moments for appeal. I recognize that that's a imperfect system, but that's the system we have. And we've tried to be really transparent to the best of our abilities. But I do appreciate the frustration because I mean, I'm on the Conservation Commission. There's all the time, there's stuff in town meetings that I don't even know has happened. So I understand that frustration and I hear you on that. Finally, I just say that to Mary's point, we're not trying to do anything with maintenance activities. I think that's like a really, and I was trying to get at that before where when I said as Bill was kind of live editing, these are for like new activities. If you need to fix a pothole in your driveway and it's in a buffer zone, fix the pothole. If you want to add 3 parking spaces to your driveway, that's new things that are in the buffer zone. And you'd have, right now, you'd have to come in for a permit anyways. Like there's nothing really in this list is what I was trying to say is that much different than the process now. It's just clarifying that these are things we expect you to come in and get a permit for. We're not saying you can't do it. And a lot of them, as Mary was saying, if depending on distance from the wetland, maybe in RDA, the type of thing they are, maybe a really minimal thing. But these are all, if it's maintenance, it's maintenance. But if they're new activities, We're just being explicit about where we expect people to come in for permits to avoid inconsistencies in like applications. And also, like, we have people who come in because this isn't listed anywhere. They don't know any better. We deal with people all the time who they're not doing anything wrong that they know about. They're not trying to do anything wrong, but it's not spelled out for them that you can't put a woodshed, cut out like all the brush around a wetland right up to the wetland and put a woodshed there. Like, that's currently not a permitted activity, but it's not spelled out for them. So all of a sudden they cut that out.
It might be permitted, but not without a permit.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying, Mary. You need to get a permit for it. You can't just do it. That's what I was trying to say, is you need to come in and talk to us and permit it right now. But it's not spelled out in the bylaw, so people don't know unless you hire a consultant, and then you're paying a ton of money. And it's something that you could save yourself a ton of money if you just knew. You're not going to get in trouble. So this gives us a way to, especially this section, I don't know how much new we're really adding so much as just being very explicit about, if you want to do this, please come talk to us so it can be done the correct way and get permitted properly, rather than have somebody drive by or a neighbor get upset and call us. And then somebody's going to get an enforcement order and be paying fines and doing all this other stuff. That's the last thing we want to do. So hopefully that makes sense and answers some of your concerns. And if not, please let me know, and I'm happy to expand on it, or maybe somebody more eloquent can talk.
You did pretty good. Can I make a brief comment, Brian, and then I'm done for the night?
Sure.
So folks, I think you understand what I'm trying to say to you. I'm not being unreasonable. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I'm saying, show us in the document. There's nothing here about what we can do. There's nothing here about protecting the homeowner. It's all restrictive. That's how we're going to read it. That's the first thing. Second thing is, people will definitely read it that way at town meeting. So if you want to avoid a big thing at town meeting, have a meeting like this and have it be well publicized and get people to actually comment. Otherwise, you're going to get it at town meeting. That's just the physics and dynamics of the area where we live. We're fierce Americans. Other than that, I respect you all. Thank you for letting me speak. I do think there's some good things you're trying to do. I hope you'll find balance, and thank you very much, and have a good night. I have to go on to some other activities. And thank you, Brian, for recognizing me, and the rest of you as well. I bid you adieu. God bless.
Thank you.
Good night, Mike.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Desalvo, you've been patiently sitting there with your hand up. You still have something on your mind?
I would just say, so thank you again for recognizing me, Brian. I strongly support Mark and his comments. I think it was a good dialogue and constructive. And I would just observe as I listen to your thought process and try and understand where, folks with good intentions, maybe there is some of this confusion. Sorry, my dog wants to chime in as well. That in trying, a couple of observations, like one is that I can see the inadvertently, by expanding this to all of Newbury instead of just Plum Island and the definition of wetlands, how that item H could have happened, right? Because I also, I understand that if you, lived inland next to a wetland, you don't want people cutting trees down in that wetland without getting appropriate permit. Yet, as you've also pointed out, by definition, all of Plum Island is part of jurisdiction. So that's where it feels like overreaching, right? Versus somebody who may live on a 5-acre lot in Byfield where, 2 acres are above grade, or whatever the right term is, and 3 acres are surrounded by defined wetland, then, that's a different circumstance, at least in my understanding. So it's sort of an inadvertent situation. And then the other observation I would make is that, taking in good faith your objective of trying to have consistency and efficiency in your process, because I imagine it is frustrating when you deal with the same issues over and over and you try and do process improvement, and accepting that that's what you're trying to do here. In my mind, there's a difference between bringing people to you to ask questions versus defining what requires approval. and maybe I'm not fully understanding some of that back and forth. You know, I get that you don't want to have to issue cease and desist on people who you know, innocently or not innocently do things that should have required prior approval. On the other hand, I think what Mark is articulating is that by trying to cover all the bases, it feels like everything has to come to you for, if not approval, at least a check-in. And that, you know, again, that may not be your intention, but that's sort of what folks are feeling like, and rightly or wrongly, it feels like by having to come to ask whether we need to get permission to do something. I apologize, down a second. That we're losing, you know, some of our rights and our control. So that's, you know, hopefully that's somewhat helpful. But I share Mark's concerns, and I do see a good dialogue trying to happen here, and you know, so anyway, thank you.
Yeah, oh, thanks, Stephen. You know, the hang up that we have, you know, the box that we're stuck in, is to deeply oversimplify, and you know, hopefully nobody has a different opinion on this. But the oversimplification of this law and the way it's built and the way you need to sort of interact with it is basically it's a thou shalt not law. You know, it's not built to say you can, you should. It's only structured as a what you can't do. And so the problem that we find is that we discover what people can't do, but the law that's on the books doesn't, you know, account for that kind of thing. And so, you know, the arguments about, you know, putting in like gardening of a type that you can do, you know, that's unfortunately, it's just not the way the thing is designed. You know, it's just the structure of the creature that we're stuck with. You know, and I'm sure, you know, Mary, you've got a couple of observations in that vein. But, you know, unfortunately, as far as I understand the creature that we're dealing with, that's the way it is, you know, and I can fully agree with you, and then I can't do anything with it at the same time.
I think that there's some work we could do to edit that, those activities and maybe address these concerns. Most of what's there, A through K, is already in, like someone already mentioned it, I think Ben, you know, it's already in the Wetland Protection Act. And so it's bringing that language into the bylaw. So it's not changing much, but there are some differences, and I can see somebody reading it and not understanding that those things are already happening, that it looks a little frightening, you know, that seems very restrictive. So I think maybe we can do some work to try to address those issues and make it a little clearer what types of projects you're really interested in seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
Ideally, you want a big net so you don't miss stuff, because you know, stuff happens and people cause damage to wetlands even if they don't mean to. They might not know that they have wetlands, or they might not understand that they're protected. That happens all the time. But I think it's important that, you know, we
I don't know if
go
I'm
through that fine-tooth comb there.
Am I still
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
online? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mary. That's very thoughtful. I completely empathize with where you're coming from. And yet I think, you know, at the risk of trying to interpret Mark and Bob's comments earlier about, you know, why do we need to layer on top of? Because as you say, if most of this is already in the Wetlands Protection Act, you know, obviously that's not up for debate tonight. So, but by adding language that isn't, you know, identical to it, like earlier in this bylaw, you referenced CMR 310. Okay, it is what it is. That also is not up for debate tonight. So, you know, by repeating things, but they're not identical, it creates that angst about, well, what more is happening here?
I can see that. Yeah.
And yet there may be some clarifications that are, you know, well, you know, and I'm not going to speak for Bob, who may say, you know, I don't want anything, you know, whatever, his own words speak for themselves. you know, I could understand how you may want a clarifying element because of some special circumstance. I don't know. But it just, you know, it sends off all sorts of alarm bells. And as I was trying to read the Wetlands Protection Act and CMR 310 in preparation for this last night, and then sort of, you know, getting confused where the different references were, it just, you know, yeah, it's, you know, and obviously it's probably over my pay grade. But again, that's what creates that angst, is what you're hearing from homeowners who are like, okay, what am I missing here? And you know, and even as you point out, again, not accusing anybody on this call of doing anything with bad intentions, but as you say, this is intended to provide continuity across changes in committee members and conservation agents, et cetera. If it's worded in such a broad "thou shalt not" way, to use your term, Brian, somebody's interpretation of that empowerment, you know, reading it literally, could be draconian.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a normal reaction to have, either to the bylaw or to the regular state law. You know, they're intimidating and they look like they're telling you can't do anything. So yeah, and I hope you saw us all smile, you know, when you said you started to read that law, because that is hard reading.
Yeah.
You know, I always get made fun of by, you know, friends and family that I do this voluntarily, because it's a terrible piece of writing to have to read. But yeah, no, we recognize what you're saying and understand, and, you know, basically agree with you. It's just in this situation, you know, that to get better at what we're doing and to communicate better with the residents and to save everybody time and money, you know, we take this on and it looks like exactly what you said. And that's not the motivation necessarily, but we do agree and understand that it certainly is easy to see it that way. But if you're okay, Stephen, we'll, who else? Bill, you've got a few more hands up. Who's next on the?
Got Dan Streeter, Mario Cannavale, and Dan Linden.
All right, we'll take them in that order.
Okay, so Bill, if you could turn the video on, it'd be helpful for me. You've got me blocked out, but so this section here with this list of activities in 310, in either the Wetlands Protection Act or 3 NCMR, dredge, fill, and alter is what comes up, and that's basically covers everything that's on that list. So this is just a more definitive list, and that can be helpful or not, as you depends on how you look at it. Second point is that once we have a bylaw, we can create some regulations, and those regulations may in fact be beneficial to homeowners, wherein we can define administrative procedures for certain activities that don't require approval. They just require going into the agent, explaining to him you're taking down 3 diseased trees that happen to be jurisdictional. Then maybe, you know, in those certain areas, we can allow certain things to happen without a full permit process. That's all that.
Thanks, Dan. Mario, why don't you take the floor?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Great, coming through clearly.
Great. Yeah, this may have been discussed earlier. I had to step out for a bit, but I was just curious. I'm an alternate member on the zoning board, and as you know, we've been discussing the 40B project at Pearson Lane. Would these bylaws anyway affect the state bylaws in any way, supersede? And I bring this up because, you know, the mention of the vernal pools are there, and that was one thing we thought would be something that could help us stop the project, actually. But I realized that the state bylaws, had some kind of jurisdiction. So I guess my question is, would these help at all for 40B restrictive, 40B projects?
The 40Bs would be exempt from local bylaw.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Plus they filed before this was.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of locked out. I mean, if it gets approved in April, it would.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the future. So, but I guess they supersede. Thanks.
All right, Dan, your turn.
Thanks, Brian. No, I just wanted to raise a counterpoint, for folks that are interested and worried about property rights. I just want to point out that we all live in a community, right? And a lot of these resources, these wetland resources that are specifically protected, again, by state law. If folks are being given more instruction on what they can and cannot do, that's a benefit, right? Because if I have neighbors that are doing things they're not supposed to do that affect the wetland resource in my community, that affects many of us, not just those that own property next to the wetland. So if these are helpful for guiding folks, even if they seem overly restrictive or seem like they're, telling you what you can't do as opposed to what you can do, I think that's a benefit. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. And then we've got Commissioners Ben and Dan. You guys want to talk again?
I'm going to make the bold move of proposing a potential solution.
You may be so bold.
Would it be helpful if we were to fragment or bifurcate this list into those activities that are already where, that are very clearly like we're just bringing out of the WPA and listing here for people to see to make it easy. So things that are already activities that are called out in the WPA and ones that we have modified or added.
Personally, I think that'd be good for a cheat sheet, like a sister document kind of thing. But in the live document, I don't know. I mean, I'm open to the idea. I just don't know that it would be clear-ing rather than just kind of confusing. But
I mean, I think you could say that the following activities as specified in 310 CMR, but not limited. So you could say after it says, but not limited to, as pointed in, in 310 CBMR, and then have it break where it says, in addition to those, the following activities are also, blah, 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 blah. And so I have like, A through H are exact, be very specific. A through H these are coming out of the WPA. And then IJK are things we are adding to this list. So that people don't just see a giant list and say, as Steve is saying, like there's an assumption of, and Mark was saying, there's an assumption that you've just heaped all this stuff on us. And so I really think this is just a communication issue. And that's what I should have been more clear about when I was responding to Mark, is that I think it's just like a communication issue where like, we're trying to help people. So in our minds, we're like, we're trying to help you. And people are like, you're adding all this new stuff. And we're like, but this is stuff you just didn't know about that already affected you. So I think if we can make it clear that way, like this is all just stuff that we're trying to help you by saying, all right, this is coming straight out of this. So A through H straight out, and then IJK, we're adding these three things that, and be very, with our wording in those, we can maybe change that wording as, to be very specific about what it is. If we feel that's necessary. Off the top of my head, I can't remember that what we add. I think maybe I was an added in one, the truncated one. But I don't know what other ones were. Maybe K. Mary might have an idea off the top of her head.
Well, I would have to go back to the state regulations and look at the language. It's not the same language in this as in this. It's the same intent. It's not exactly the same wording, I don't believe. Maybe, well, I have to look it up. I can do that while we're talking, but
yeah, and maybe Bill, if you want to throw a comment, add a comment to section 3 to that effect, so that we don't lose the idea if we're here too long and we get forgetful. You know, because if there's an ability to do that, you know, I think Ben is right that, you know, it shows sort of the things that are up for discussion and the things that aren't up for discussion. And it's not something, you know, that looks as big as it is. You know, I think that would be helpful. So Ben, did you just volunteer to be chair? I think you're coming up with great ideas here.
No problem.
The Wetland Protection Act does identify minor activities that don't require a permit. So that's one thing that we could do, is includes those minor activities. There's a long list of them.
Or we maybe,
cool.
Yeah, we could, or we could just say the minor activities, as we could point people directly. We'd have to decide whether it's save space and point people to say, go here for minor activities.
Yep.
That are permitted, or do we want to spell them all out?
That's a good point. You could just back reference the minor activities in the state rules, and that we would adopt those as part of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could do either way.
Yep.
Steve has his hand up now.
Yeah, Steve, take the floor. You're muted.
Do we have to unmute him?
Hey, I'm back. I think I'm back, right?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're in.
Thank you. So I really like Ben's idea. So you guys work it out. I realize, you know, but I think that would be constructive. A question I have is, you know, as we're talking about the relationship between CMR 310, otherwise known as the Wetlands Protection Act, right, and this bylaw, there was an earlier reference to a Plum Island bylaw, which, as far as I know, doesn't exist, but there is a beach management plan. And again, I could be wrong, but it makes me curious, since that also, from a purely Plum Island perspective, and I know this now is a broader perspective for the whole town as you've changed this document, but a lot of the activities that are allowed or not allowed are referenced in the beach management plan. And how does that intersect with this? Because that's also a reference document that's on your website, and you know, it may or may not have hierarchical influence or not, but I assume you probably have jurisdiction over the beach management plan as well. Maybe not, I don't know. But if you could clarify that, that might be helpful. And it might be also important in your overall messaging to folks about how those coexist.
Yeah, so Steve, just to make sure and double check, because I said this at the beginning, and you're right, we've been kind of talking about it offhandedly, but the law that we're working on at the moment, the lettering that's in black, is a wetlands bylaw that does exist for the town that only applies to the barrier beach.
Okay.
It only applies to
when you said Plum Island bylaw. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It was sloppy. Thank you for pointing it out, Steve. That's just sloppy vernacular by us, vernacular use.
Okay, but
it's a great point.
But I still, my question about the beach management plan, if it's making sense to you, it also touches on many of these activities, and it may not be something you want to tackle tonight, but just, you know, as you can tell, the interested parties are going to look to understand all the different areas where what's permitted or not permitted is defined. And I think, you know, there is an understanding, you know, CMR 310 is not debatable. You know, you're clearly trying to say, for the most part, you're just trying to be clear and consistent about how that applies in this jurisdiction. And you're now talking about calling out specifically anything that's different from that. You know, again, people may not like it, but at least I think it will focus the discussion rather than being overwhelmed by a long list, where most of it is what it is anyway, as you're saying. It's not really debatable. But, you know, we also have this other document that, again, I can't recall off the top of my head to what extent it creates, law or bylaws per se, but it's a guidance document that, may be dated, but is still there. And how does that intersect with this? And it's food for thought. Again, I don't have a specific issue per se, but I also know that it's a reference document that I was looking at in preparation for this meeting. As I was looking at your draft and then CMR 310. So I'll stop there. Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, I appreciate your indulgence in having all three of those going at the same time. I don't think I would have done that. As to the beach management plan, I don't have anything to say to that. I don't have a good answer. Bill Holt, Mary, Ben, Pete, Dan.
Yeah,
Dan, all you.
Well, it's just that was approved with an order of conditions. Basically, the plan was created, came in front of the commission. It was approved with an order of conditions. That gave the commission some ability to work on some of the recommendations therein, but the order of conditions is expired. I asked our former agent probably a year or two ago, just what's up with the beach management plan, and his take was that it expired and it was just there as just for reference, like as you mentioned. It's a good reference document, but it holds no real weight.
Great, Dan. Thank you. So, who would like to move on to the next section?
Could I make a suggestion, Brian?
Please.
Yes, rather than read the entire verbiage, if we could just kind of maybe hit what the changes are, what the changes reflect, and what the thought process was, that might be helpful in facilitating the discussion, rather than, because anyone can read the black components, but and I'll take the first crack if you want, and I'll see if it works. And if a baseball bat comes flying at me, I'll understand.
It's your idea. Own it. Absolutely. Go for it.
So this section is about definition. So just like any type of contract or any type of document that has a component of definitions, this brings construct to the definitions. So the first is, except as otherwise provided in this bylaw or regulations of the commission, the definitions of terms, exemptions, limited projects, performance standards, timeframes, and requirements of this bylaw shall be set forth in the Wetland Bioprotection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, 40, and 310 CMR 10, the state regulations, as may be amended time to time. Basically, just giving definition to what this is about. So that's the beacon for what the definitions are. The following definitions shall apply to Plum Island Barrier Beach in the interpretation and implementation of the bylaw. So just again defining that it's included, which it already is. The verbiage from A, B, C, D, E are unchanged. Are unchanged to E, and then E, we're delineating flood boundaries delineated by the Newbury Flood Insurance Rate Map, community number 250096, map panel 25009C, panels 0114F to 0118F, and 0136G to 01369G, 0256G, 02567G, and 02567G, 02567. We have that 2567, 2577, revised effective July 16, 2016, shall apply, or as most recently amended. So just again, giving that definition to what the current flood boundaries are. And then we're just on subject to FEMA V Zone 1 within the 100- year. So it's just a cleanup. Putting a hyphen in the year. And then number 4, defining FEMA A and AE zone shall mean those portions of land subject to hazard areas and floods 100-year storm events in the event of 1% annual chance. Again, just more definition. Number 5, just adding the word new development. So we end up,
It was just renumbering.
Those are just renumbered.
Yep,
Yeah, renumbered, that's all.
Let's see. And then this verbiage, if I'm not mistaken, is this just a cut and paste from what is reflected above, Mary? The definitions for vernal pool, isolated vernal wetland.
These are intended definitions for the inland wetland resources.
Right. So these are accepted definitions that are well known within the industry, correct?
No, these would be, well, these are bylaw, these are additional to the Wetland Protection Act.
Right.
So these are the areas where vernal pool habitat is included in the Wetland Protection Act, but we are making a change that isolated wetland, that last sentence there, isolated wetland may be presumed to include vernal pool habitat. So this is new language under the bylaw, essentially. These three items.
And the reasoning for those, do you want to just describe those?
So the commission was interested in getting better protection for vernal pools. So that is number 9, is to try to provide enhanced protection of vernal pools. Currently under the state rules, vernal pools are only protected if they occur in another jurisdictional wetland, and only if they're certified by the State Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. So that's number 9. Number 10, there was some interest in protecting wetlands that are non-bordering wetlands. So isolated vegetated wetlands is a new category under the state rules. We have bordering vegetated wetlands, which are required to border on another water body or waterway. Isolated wetlands are not required to border on a waterway. And so we're establishing a new category of wetland, isolated vegetated wetlands, and that meet a minimum size criteria, essentially. So they have to be 2,500 square feet in size. And that's where that comes from. This is, again, from model bylaws. Many of the surrounding towns have protection for isolated wetlands. Well, I would say most of them do. And then number 11 has to do with Newbury has an area of critical environmental concern, which is the Great Marsh. It extends to elevation 10 around the limit of the marsh, and that part of the resource, the salt marsh, is considered to be extra sensitive and receives additional state protection only sort of in name. This actually provides additional protection in jurisdiction by establishing that as a separate resource area and identifying where it occurs.
Perfect.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, we do need some circular reinforcement, right? Because we had to put these definitions in because we put in the language further in, and so that language had to refer back to itself. So the self-referential nature of the document needs to be tight.
So these are, yeah, right. These are the definitions of the resources that were identified previously.
Okay, good job. That was much faster and a lot less boring. So let's do the same round. From the commission, any additional comments above and beyond what we just did? Going once, going twice. Okay, good. And then anybody from the town who would like to chime in on this particular section? Town government as opposed to town resident. Going once, going twice.
Brian, James
No.
has his hand up.
Right. So he's next. He's first of our general public.
Hello?
James, the floor is yours. Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. So if you scroll up, I just was wondering, or down, I'm not sure on the document, the 2,500 foot thing, again, to clarify, is that a change to Plum Island or not?
Again,
Yeah.
it's not intended to be. And this at the beginning of this section, it says the definitions apply to all other wetland resources. So it is intended to not be Plum Island.
So
that
are
is
we
an
at
area we need to clarify.
5,000? Are we at 5,000, Mary, or
Inland?
2,500?
There's no isolated wetland protection currently under the state regulations or in the current Plum Island bylaw. So this is intended again to just provide protection for isolated wetlands. It was intended to be in inland areas, not the coastal areas, not the Plum Island areas. So we'll have to correct that to make sure that that is the case.
Okay, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, ACEC occurs on the island too, so.
Mm-hmm.
No, the ACEC is bounded by the roads, isn't it?
It goes to elevation 10.
No, we just had a case where it spilled over the road, Brian. It goes to elevation 10. It came across the road.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
It's not a lot of places it does that, but there are a couple little spots where it does. Yeah, do we specify that these are inland isolated vegetated wetland areas? Does that take care? Can we specify that?
Yep.
And just take care of that? I mean, I appreciate Dan's point that the whole island is a jurisdictional area, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I think in some ways we're maybe making more of it than we should, but if it makes people's, makes voters more comfortable, town residents more comfortable with it, then I'm fine with trying, specifying that we're talking about inland isolated vegetated wetland areas.
Right.
So the ACs.
I don't think it's a paragraph 9. I think it's paragraph 10 because it's not a vernal pool.
Yeah, it does say inland. Yeah, okay, you added that, Bill.
I added it. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to add it or not, but I'll put a question mark. If you want me to add it,
I don't think we want to add it there because the ACEC is in the coastal area.
Exactly.
So it doesn't make sense.
The ACEC extends all the way up the Parker River estuary, so it does include some inland areas.
It includes both. What I'm saying is it has both. So I don't think we want to put inland at the top. We want to constrain where we talk about both here and in earlier sections where we talk about isolated vegetated wetlands. We'd want to say that isolated vegetated wetlands that occur in inland areas rather than coastal areas. I guess is what I'm proposing.
Thank you.
We'll have to figure out where to add it. We'll add it.
I'd search for isolated vegetated wetlands, and probably everywhere we say isolated vegetated wetlands, we have to say inland isolated vegetated wetlands or isolated vegetated wetlands that occur in inland habitat or however inland resource areas, inland areas. What do you think about that, Mary?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Or it would just be specific that don't occur on Plum Island.
Right. Same way.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Because inland, somebody might assume inland means inland of the island. I don't know, but it's just not on the island.
Yeah, I think it's probably more exact way to say it, Mary. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Stewart, do you have a new comment, or is that an old hand that's raised on your screen?
I just unmuted. No, that was my question. Thank you so much.
Okay. So your hand was just still up on the video, so I didn't know if you had a new thought.
I didn't mean to leave it up.
Oh, that's okay. You raised your hand again. All right. Anybody else from the public? I'm not seeing anything. Hands up or people waving at the screen. You seeing any, Bill?
No. Nope, I think it's clear.
Okay. And then assuming that means we're good on this section, let's move into 95.4. Specific performance standards for the barrier beach is all carryover, right?
Yeah, except this, we're gonna eliminate that one word that is an error. It's
Right, these are the grammatical changes that were suggested.
Yeah.
And then that takes us down to 95.4.1. Specific performance standards for all other wetland resource areas. All right. Let's keep the merry-go-round going. Who wants this one? Dan, you want to take this one?
No.
I'll do it. Dan saying go. I'll do it. So 94.4. So specific performance standards for all other wetland resource areas. So the purpose of this is to, I will read the exact text, but basically says that there will be performance standards. So we've set out purposes and definitions in every jurisdiction areas. The specific rules, like we've said earlier, we don't really have specific rules in mind right now that we're writing in or that we want to do. We just know we have these areas of concern. So specific performance standards for work or activities within the wetland resource areas described above may be provided in regulations adopted by the Newbury Conservation Commission. So this is just spelling out that we've talked and specified about these things that we are wanting to set regulations over, and what we're going to do is then have regulations, and that's how we're going to spell out exactly what it is that we expect or that we're hoping for from applicants when they apply to do work. So we're saying the mechanism by which we're going to address these purposes and jurisdictions is regulations. Mary, is that correct?
Yeah, and that's the way you typically do it in a bylaw. What's unique about the Plum Island bylaw is that the regulations are built into the bylaw already.
Yeah.
So this is saying that we have, we would have the authority to write regulations specifically having to do with all other wetland resource areas other than Plum Island.
Yeah. Say inland. Should that say inland? All other inland wetland?
Yeah, maybe something like that, just to be clear that we're only talking about writing regulations.
Well, right, except for maybe the salt marsh along the Parker River. Would that be like, what do we mean by inland?
Or for all non-Plum Island wetland resources? How's that?
For all resource areas excepting Plum Island or outside of Plum Island.
Exactly, yeah.
For all wetland resources outside of Plum Island.
Because Plum Island already has its regulations.
Above.
Right.
So just a question, are you sure that you don't want to reserve the ability to change some of the performance standards?
Yep, there's that point too. Yep.
I mean, I can think of several areas, again, where it might be just for clarity to kind of provide the framework so people, maybe it's stuff that they can do without getting a permit. Maybe it's something that we feel that's not in there now that we feel is important or it deserves some consideration for inclusion as a performance standard.
Actually, in 95.11, it is in there. I don't know if we need to have it there.
It does say you can add regulations.
Rules and regulations.
Yep. Okay. So it's already in there anyway. Okay.
Yeah, so basically we don't really even need to have it.
We don't need to even have that section. We can take it right out. Yeah.
Can probably be eliminated. Didn't realize that. So
how does that language that we already have, how does that interact with this inland coastal Plum Island thing that we've got? Is there any specific to administer and enforce the bylaw, failure by the commission to do so?
Nope.
Right, so if we adopt the bylaw and it has all the inland stuff, then the regulations are built in.
It already has it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Take that out.
We haven't changed that. That's the same wording that was in, actually it was amended in 2019. I didn't realize that. So, back here again. So this could possibly be eliminated altogether. This 9541.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just put it in because they had 95-4, so it was. We felt like we needed to put something in, right?
Yeah. Great. Let's keep rolling. 95.5 on variances. Who wants to volunteer for this one? Who hasn't had a turn yet?
And I don't think there's any changes to this section.
Oh, even better.
I don't see any changes to that. That's exactly word for word what was in previous.
Excellent. All right, let's do 95.6 then. Because in the spirit of what we're actually doing, if there's nothing to change, then there's nothing to discuss, in a manner of speaking. So then what do we have in this 95.6 applications? This has been tweaked. The first sentence has been tweaked to update all applications to perform activities in the town's coastal and inland resource areas within the 100-foot buffer zone there too, and within the 200-foot riverfront area located in the town of Newbury and on the Plum Island Berry Beach. So we just have updated that first sentence to be inclusive of the whole town. And other than that one change, are there any more?
I think that's it for that section. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just to include
all right, here, let's go down to the next section then. Hearings looks unchanged. 95.7, unchanged. Good. 95.8.
Just formatting.
Also unchanged.
Yeah.
Some formatting stuff.
And then this one here, this is one that Lisa Mead had brought up that was not worded properly in the original. So there's some minor edits.
For the sake of, those who are questioning, the difference between, what we saw as grammatical and, minor edits versus something that would actually have an impact. And so the change here, the commission, it used to be written that the commission shall extend an order for 1 period, 3 years.
Right.
Is that really how it read?
Yeah.
That sounds smooth. And so we're changing that to now read, the commission shall extend an order for a period of up to 3 years. And so that's kind of, that's all it is.
Yeah, actually, the first sentence and the last sentence in that paragraph contradicting because you could do it twice, but that one says they only grant it once.
So what happened here was that it was written originally so that you had a conflict between the 1 and the 2. So we've always said that you can get 2 extensions of 3 years each. So 2 separate 3-year extensions on your orders. The way it was written, it sounded contradictory. It wasn't, but it sounded that way. So we changed the 1 to a period of 3 years, which can be then done 2 times. So that's what the edits to this paragraph were. So hopefully everybody understands that part of it, is that we're just doing this. So it was very clear, you can get 2 3-year extensions to your order.
Yep.
Very awkward grammar.
Terrible.
All right, what else have we gotten? 95.9, certificate of compliance, no change. 95.10, responsibility for compliance, no change. 95.11, rules and regulations, no change. 95.12, enforcement, investigation, and violation. Did we change anything in this one? No, right?
Just a formatting thing down below.
Yeah.
Right.
Somehow. And then this one, it was another change that Lisa Mead had recommended.
Right, and actually, yeah, let's just pause. Going to the public or to the commission, is there anybody that wants to sort of chime in on any of those sections that we just sort of rushed through, relatively speaking? Even though there are no changes there that we felt needed discussion, I don't want to continue racing through these and bury something in the back in case anybody wants to bring them up. So going once, going twice. All right, consultant services. Yeah, so a grammar change, we're deleting the word certificate of compliance out of the sentence No, that's not how I should read that. So the sentence reads, upon receipt of an application for notice of intent, request for determination of applicability, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, or any time preceding the commission's issuance of a certificate of compliance, the commission is authorized to require an applicant to pay a fee for the reasonable costs and expenses borne by the commission for specified expert engineering and other consultant services deemed necessary by the commission to come to a final decision on the application. And the grammar there is poor, and so we're deleting the certificate of compliance out of that and replacing it with determination of applicability, order of condition, or order of resource area delineation. Just because it looks like the COC, the certificate of compliance, would be sort of a pivot around which everything else spins. And that's not really the intent of the section, to give so much weight to that particular phase of the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the way it read before, it looked like you could require some that, you know, consulting fees even after the permit was issued.
Yeah.
That's not correct.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
No, not really.
Does this basically say that someone like me can request a determination of applicability, but I have to pay for it?
No, it says that the Conservation Commission is authorized to authorized to require the applicant pay peer review fees, essentially, during the course of their deliberation on a permit application.
Okay, thanks,
So
Mary.
that it just has to do with outside consultants being allowed to be hired to help assist in reviews. The way it was worded before, it looked like the commission had the authority to require outside consultants even after an order of conditions was issued and up until, you know, a certificate of compliance was issued. And that's not the case. It's only until the order of conditions is issued.
Okay, thank you.
Any of those permits. Yeah.
Just something grammatical. Bill, I can't tell if it's on my copy or in yours. After the word determination, there's a comma. So should that comma go? Is that on your edit too?
Yeah, it should be. Should be going. Didn't see it. It's hidden behind the color. Yeah, so it's supposed to separate the three different permits: termination, applicability, order of conditions, or order of resource area delineation. Those are the three permits you can get. So.
All right, well then let's keep moving here. We're doing okay. 9514 captions and severability is unchanged. And then 9515 is new. And this is the final section. And then what were we trying to accomplish with this one?
I think we're trying to set a new date for when this bylaw would apply.
Oh yeah, so we're grandfathering in things that would happen that like we've got under review at the moment that would be unimpacted by this.
Right. I think the other date hasn't changed too. I think it's September 1st, 1990 has to be a similar date.
Yeah, so this one, the point of this is just grandfathering things in, and the things that don't apply to, right? The bylaws will not apply to those projects or activities which are exempt from the provisions of the WPA. So if there's like the 40B thing, you know, we cannot regulate things that the state has explicitly said shall not be regulated. Okay.
Yep, so that's the end.
Well, in that case, you know, anybody have any final thoughts?
my thought is that there's a fair amount of potential reworking of this that may be needed, and that we may have a difficult time accomplishing that by whatever date you need to do it by Friday, you said, Bill?
Yeah, yeah, it's
To get
probably,
I think it
yeah.
might be worthwhile to spend a little more time and potentially even have another hearing with a cleaned up copy, and have an opportunity to maybe incorporate some of the comments we heard tonight.
Yeah, and we need to work out the question of how to do the vernal pool, especially. That one is a detail. The broader comments, some of them I don't know how to address, and some of them, on a certain level, I don't know if we can, because so much of the regulatory issue of Plum Island isn't going anywhere. It's not up for debate, and we are certainly looking not to increase the regulatory burden on the island. And we've caught a few things that if not in actuality, then certainly in appearance, look to increase the regulatory burden. And so I think we've got a few things that we can excise relatively easily. Whether or not we can get this done by Friday, I think has more to do with Bill Holt's plate than anything. I don't know. None of it sounds to me like it's too. I don't see anything insurmountable in the manner of speaking, but that's just my take.
Yeah, I think the big ones, the vernal pool, and probably somehow modifying this list, like we had mentioned, either separating the WPA items to those that were added by the commission, and maybe redefining some of those. That might take a little bit, though. It sounded like we need more input, possibly from the public perception of what that says. That's my take on it, but I guess we can edit it and try to just float it out there to the town and see what's said. If that's what the choice is to do, we still have to deal with the vernal pool too. So.
And I think too that, both for Mr. Desalvo, since you're still here, and for anybody who might watch this recording at a later date, at a reasonable hour, I think Bill Holt would be happy to have any language ideas that come to you. We're trying to live edit this now, but if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, this would really clarify this point that I'd like to make, or this issue that I have, or, their choice of wording could be improved. We've got some time to deal with this. And while we are certainly, we've got the aim of going to the town meeting coming, we're not necessarily, committed to that. If there's enough feedback and there's enough interest in engaging with this over the summer and into the fall, by all means, we're happy to do it. As Ben alluded to, it's kind of hard to get in touch with people and for people to engage with this. And on a certain level, I'm not against, the law not passing at town meeting if it gives us an opportunity to engage and for people to sort of become more aware of what it is that we've got on the table. So on a certain level, if this were to be brought up at town meeting and go down to defeat, that's not necessarily something I would see as a bad thing. Just make sure that it would open up the gates to having people participating in the process. And that would be a good thing from my perspective. But, at the moment, if I can put you on the spot, Mr. Desalvo, if there's any language or points where you think some of the ideas that you brought up could be, incorporated into the bylaw that we're playing with, by all means, whether now or later, chime in. Absolutely.
Am I muted?
No, you're
Nope, we
good.
can hear you.
You're
Okay.
loud and clear.
All right. for me personally, and again, I'm not going to venture to speak for Mark and Bob. They speak pretty forcefully for themselves, but I liked the comment about obviously that section 3 where we had a lot of issues about clarifying what was just incorporated by reference and sort of restated. Again, I didn't audit the wording, which you said wasn't exact, but I'll assume that it that if it's intended to be the same, that we state that, and then whatever else is new or different is called out would be helpful. And I personally completely empathize with your challenges of broadening this document beyond Plum Island to include the inland areas and what you need to accomplish there. That's great. I don't have any suggestions. You're wrestling with those issues well. So my focus and concern has been really specifically around the Plum Island area, Plum Island references specifically, and and again, this stating that there's no intended increase in regulation, and yet you heard pretty forcefully the views of some of the other folks on the call that didn't perceive that. And so I think that would go a long way, just that one area, in my opinion. But I don't know how to wordsmith that. I don't have it right. I don't have a specific suggestion, but I think you were, if I recall correctly, it was which of your colleagues there was the one? It was Ben that I was going to call him the bearded guy, but anyway, Ben, there's more than one bearded guy.
Dan holds the title.
Yeah, Ben, I think Ben, I was saying amen when you were sort of describing it. So, I think there was a strong germ of an idea there. Anyway, thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Thanks for, contributing. The participation is half the battle. All right. Anybody else? Any other closing ideas, arguments, thoughts? I think we're pretty close to tying this up.
Do we need to, does the commission need to vote to approve this before it gets forwarded? I mean, procedurally, is there another step here for us? We don't have a final document to vote on, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Procedurally, we do need to actually vote to send this on. And I think Bill Holt may have sent an email around to the effect of, maybe we'll have a quick meeting on Thursday for like 5 minutes to go over, a final draft and decide whether or not we do feel comfortable enough with it to send it on. Like Mary, the points that you were talking about, the vernal pool thing, if we want to take it to town meeting and see what happens, or if we want to keep it to ourselves a little bit and keep sort of, polishing, so to speak. But yeah, we do need another step. We do formally need to take a vote at some point.
But my sense is that there's a little bit more to do than just, a day and a half of work. I think that I would rather go to town meeting with something that's been really well vetted, and potentially another hearing, even, just have one hearing and then vote on it 2 days later. And it doesn't feel like we're giving it enough time to settle in and have people fully understand it. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and I don't know, Bill Holt, if you've been given the impression that this deadline of this week is something that can move, or if it's a pretty hard deadline.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty, the selectmen are meeting on the 30th, the same night we're meeting for a regular meeting. And that we have to have it in at least the day before, so that's being the 29th. I was targeting Thursday as being the day we really want to vote on it and get it in on Thursday night or Friday after we vote on it. So
do we have any sense of whether the selectmen are in favor of this, or I know, Brian, you had a meeting, but
I mean, really. Nobody's called me to ask any more questions, whatever that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
I know they are interested in having the mocked up one. They want to see the changes, clearly see the changes that are being made. So that's the one they're gonna get, is the one that's redlined and blue. Not the, I'll give them a
Right, and you
clean
already
version as
said-
well, but I can give them a clean version as well, but I think they really want to see the mocked up one so that they can see what the changes are.
Well, and Bill Holt, you sent them marked up earlier draft as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they want the
this wouldn't
final
be
one.
the first time they're doing the marked up version. This would just be the next phase of the markup.
Right.
Yeah. Mr. Stewart, you got a thought?
Yes, I'm wondering why a timeline would be more important than getting to the right feeling amongst you guys with the select board, even if it takes a couple of weeks.
It's just kind of two sides of the same coin, you know, which one's the cart and which one is the horse. That's all.
People have enough
I
to make it now. You know, this is what we do. We talk in circles for like 20 minutes and then we make up our mind finally.
I don't know whether to admit to that, Ben. Like,
I'm trying to introduce some levity. Sorry. Poor Mr. Stewart's watched so many of our meetings at this point.
I get it. I get it. I just think you guys should get together and decide what you think is best. And if it takes more than a couple of weeks, put it forth.
yeah. I mean, you know, all of Mary's points are good points. And, you know, like from my perspective, you know, to get the engagement with the public, you know, I almost would rather bring something that needs work to town meeting because people will see it then at least, you know, and right now, you know, it's hard. I know that's wrong. Like that, let's just say that outright. I know that
there's going to be one vote on this document, Brian. One vote.
You only get one shot at it. You want to have it right. Yeah.
Yep.
I know.
I think we're looking at the fall.
But man, I just like, I want people to see this and engage with it before they see it for the first time. And that's, you know, we covered that already tonight. It's hard to do.
Well, it gives us time to work on that. So as another silver lining is that if we wait till the next town meeting in the fall, then maybe we can explore with the town staff how we can get this more widely circulated.
I don't know if we can do a reverse 911 call. They do that for information purposes.
For what it's worth, so I thought of that as well, Bill. For what it's worth, several years ago, and I don't remember how I did it, but I signed up and I get email notifications for select board and planning board meetings, but not for ConsCom.
Okay.
So I just wrote an email to the town, you know, info@townofnewbury.org email asking if there's some function, because I can't find it on the website. Because
I can check with our IT. I can also check with the planner.
I was going to offer, like, you know, Mark mentioned he's the president of the Plum Island Foundation. I'm also the treasurer. We have a Facebook page, you know, and there are other nonprofits that could help get the word out. You know,
Bill, can you make it so I can share my screen?
Sure.
Thank you. This will be, hopefully people watch this on YouTube and then we can, but Steve, if you share this with the other folks on Plum Island in your organization, that's great too.
Let me get out of mine.
Oh, yeah. The option came up, but then it said you disabled it.
Hold on a second.
No worries. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you can see my web browser right now.
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay.
So this is the button, and I was like, I don't blame you. Like half the time I can't find anything on the town website either. But I believe this is it. If you click on this button right here, then you can sign up for any of the commissions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I couldn't remember where it was either. But yeah, you can go through all this stuff, and then you'll get emails, and then you get, which are links to links usually. But you can usually get the agenda at some point.
Yeah, but at least it's a heads up that something's going on. And honestly, you know, most of the time, you know, I haven't been in the last year or so, but I've attended Conservation Commission meetings several times over the years for different issues. Usually, you know, people are interested for a specific topic versus something like this. It's, you know, obviously much broader. It's the nature of the beast. And I empathize with you. You also don't have an easy way, because this isn't your normal business per se, to get the word out. So, you know, anyway, thank you, but it's useful to see. So, you know, that'll be helpful. And I think I have to think about how I can be helpful, because you know, again, rather than, you know, I personally don't have any hair to light on fire, so I'm not coming out of this with my hair on fire. But, you know, obviously there's some people that are concerned, you know, so.
Yep.
Good. Well, I think at the very least, we're not voting on anything this evening. So that's settled. You know, we have to wait on that. But other than the business of closing the meeting for the evening, is there anything else anybody wants to cover or address or bring up, et cetera, et cetera?
Are we on for Thursday?
Are we on for Thursday? Are we, I see a nod no from Ben. How does the rest of the commission feel? Just like a straw poll. Yes? No? We're doing something Thursday?
I think
I'm
it's
not
too
seeing
soon.
anybody.
Yeah.
All right. We got 2 against. That's easy. We're not seeing anybody jumping up to say, yeah, let's do it. So that seems like we're going to punt. Good. So then, Bill Holt.
Chairman, respectfully, Thursday, I didn't have anything on the calendar, but I have the 30th. And I'm not sure what that meeting is all about.
The 30th is a regularly scheduled conservation hearing. The 25th meeting, which is Thursday, is posted on our website. It's posted at Town Hall. I don't know if it's on the calendar. I have to ask.
Not on
Kathy
the
May.
calendar yet. You had me hold it open for a Zoom meeting, but I have not posted it yet.
Okay, so we
It's
probably
being
can't
held
have that
open
meeting.
specifically for this in case we needed it.
Yes.
But if it's, I guess I thought it was posted. If it's not posted, we shouldn't have the hearing because it's too late to post it now. So that kind of ends that right there.
Okay, so
All right, so good.
hearing is
2 reasons not to do
the
it on
30th?
Thursday.
Yes, the next hearing is the 30th.
Yeah, it's a regular scheduled hearing. We could put it on for discussion if you'd want to, at the end of the meeting, to discuss some changes and maybe come up with a plan for our next hearing. If that's the desire.
Yeah, actually, if we can, if you put this down as a discussion item, either for maybe even put it first thing on the agenda, you know, because Mr. Desalvo so kindly offered, you know, some help in getting the word out, and you know, if I could invite you or anybody else who might want to help with getting the word out to come in and say, you know, maybe what you can do or what is your availability is for spreading the word. That might be a nice thing to sort of keep the ball rolling, and then we won't forget about this until, you know, late September or whatever.
So I just signed up on the website. Thank you, Ben. That was very easy. So what, you know, but I'll obviously try and read the email, but if you specifically would like me to get the word out, I can, you know, I'll put that on our Facebook page, and others may pick it up. There's some, you know, we follow each other there's a few different, you know, Plum Island pages. There's also there's a Byfield page. I can try and interact if you want, you know, to do that. Be careful what you ask for, but
I think it might be helpful for us to put something on the website about not just the bylaw itself, but, you know, some of the some of the background.
That would be good because then I
Why
can link to it. Again, personally, I don't,
Because I think
my personal view would only be to help and do what you're saying is get people aware. Then they can
Right.
make their own decisions rather than me telling, whatever. If people want to know editorially what others think, that's a different issue. But I think as a citizen, I'd rather be helpful here so that people can participate in this process.
But it might be helpful to have some kind of a summary so that people understand at least what the intention is, and then before they read the language.
I think, Mary, I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think that we should actually not really push on any further on having this talked about a lot, since we're already kind of saying we're going to the fall. I'd say that we should work on creating that document and then pick this back up. So when we have a discussion and we're inviting the public to talk about it, that is available so that they come in having read that already.
Right, when we do something in the fall, or before, well before town meeting in the fall, with a presentation, like here's a finished product kind of thing. So we're not workshopping it in the meeting, but this is what we're proposing. We can still take public comment, but at least have a presentation on what we're intending to do, what the purpose is.
Would you like my email, or do you need it? I'm going to sign off, but if you want to give it to somebody, or I'll get it through that sign up. I didn't want to disappear without you knowing how to reach me if you wanted to.
You can call me.
Yeah.
You can call me and give it to me. Inspectional services.
Yep. This is Kathy.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'll call and give it to you, Kathy.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I'll call you tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, I guess,
Thank you.
Brian, my
Kat.
point was just that before we have the public and, have Steve send stuff out on Facebook and all this stuff to link to this, it'd be good to have. I think we'll just end up in a lot of redundant conversations if we don't have a summary document explaining intent first.
I won't do anything until,
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
No,
Thank
this is
you. Have a
great.
good
I mean,
evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ben, I mean, that's just consistent with what we're trying to do anyway, is not repeat ourselves as often as possible. So this is good. And, even though we have decided not to move forward with this town meeting, this was still a really productive evening and, really, I think is going to make a better product in the end. So, I don't think we lost anything by doing this. I don't think, it cost anything in the manner of speaking. This was really helpful, and especially if this is the jumping off board to greater engagement through the various Facebook postings and whatnot. That'll be good. So, I got a lot out of it.
I think we need to have them. We need to know what they say is going, what the concerns are, and hopefully we can address them as we revise the document. So it's probably best at this point to have additional hearings and conversations with these participants that were here tonight.
But also, Bill, it's not, do make sure that, the sooner you get this final piece put together, we can put that down for a little bit, this current draft, and then move into the document that Mary and Ben were talking about, so that, we have all our pieces put together that then we can circulate and share and people can engage with. I don't want to, how should we say? I just don't want to slip and forget and find ourselves, in late August, remembering we have to do this again.
Right. Yeah, we should definitely schedule sessions during the the meetings coming up, the regular meetings, to fine tune it as we go. They can send them out.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then, anybody want to go do something else with their evening? Anybody want to make a motion to move on with the night? Yeah, Pete looks excited.
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Second.
All right. We have a first, we have a second. Roll call. Benjamin.
Yep.
Daniel.
Yes.
No, Bill Lord, I skipped you. Sorry.
Yes.
Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, right? And then Mary. Just something going out of order anyway. All right.
you.
And I will also
Oh,
vote.
who seconded that?
I did.
Ben
Did you get
seconded.
Dan?
And
Yes.
Dan voted, right?
Okay.
He voted. I'm all over the place. What can I do?
All right.
Okay.
Good job.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good job. And we will see you all on the 30th.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
night.